Welcome everybody to our September WAHI Chippewa Valley Continuing Education meeting. I don't really have too much for announcements. Dave, I don't know if you have anything. I just got an email probably an hour ago from Julie, and our speaker next month are going to be David Nason and Andy Helgeson from Milwaukee, and they want to talk about report compliance. So they will be our speakers. It'll be their first time up here to a chapter meeting. They're trying to get around and hit all the chapters in October. So since we're October 1st next month, we get them first. So our speaker tonight is Levi Peck with Peck Roofing. He's going to be talking about roofing and sheathing issues and hail damage, all kinds of stuff to look for. So I guess whenever you are ready,
all right,
it's all yours. So thank you very much.
You bet. Well, as you were just told, my name's Levi Peck. I'm the current owner of Peck Roofing. A little background: my dad started the company in 1997. We have his first estimate hanging on the wall. Boy, prices were cheap back then. It was incredible. We actually found him cleaning out a bunch of stuff. He retired 2 years ago. I was an installer for most of 25 years between roofing, and then I got into siding the last 5-6 years. So we do that as a company now. And yeah, 2 years ago I took over managing everything for him. We do use subs occasionally, but a very, very small scale basis, like two-man crews for a small siding repair maybe or something like that. But generally we use our own employees for everything. It's 27 years. It's been a while ride. You see quite a few things. So that's my fancy logo that we just came up with like a year and a half ago because we had to do a little bit of marketing our trucks up for DOT and some of this other bull stuff. So anyway, that's who we are. That's who I am. Next slide. We're going to start with some hail damage pictures. I was talking to a couple of you about some of the hail damage stuff. You have people reaching out. I've had an out-of-towner look at it. I want somebody reputable that's local to look at it. I've gotten a lot of calls like that. I'm sure you guys have too. What I found is when I'm going to inspect, there's a couple of things I tell the customers. One, I need business 5 years from now. If you don't have damage, I'm not going to try to tell you have damage. I don't need to be creative about this. Two, it depends on your insurance policy and what the adjuster is like. If you're getting a independent adjuster, he's working for a smaller insurance company who have tighter rules, and he's got to justify his write-up to somebody sitting at a desk. If you have State Farm, American Family, they have in-house adjusters. A storm like this, they know there's damage. The one American Family adjuster I ran into says they know I like to write claims. I get a percentage based on the size of the claim I write. He says they send me to places that they know there's damage and that I'll write. And they're okay with that. So when I show up, 90% of the time, you're going to get something. So it really depends on the adjuster, but he still has to justify it to somebody behind the desk. So when I meet a customer, I tell them, look, I'm in business locally. I need work 5-10 years from now. I'm not going to get creative, but I am going to be careful about saying, yes, this is hail damage, no it isn't. I've met 4 or 5 different adjusters at the request of customers. Sometimes we found damage, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes it was questionable. Is it the age of the roof? Is it actual hail damage? Can we prove that it's hail damage? And that's kind of where we go. So I'm very neutral with customers on this. This house did get written. I think that the fact that the bricks were knocked off the chimney from the hail didn't hurt anything, although the particular type of brick they had,
that brick may have already been flaked away.
It was already flaking, I'm sure. And we have a couple more pictures of the same one. If you want to go to the next slide. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see where the granulars are already starting to come off the whole roof, right? If I were to just walk up and estimate the age of this roof, I would say it was probably 18 to 22 years old. Talking to the customer, and he actually worked for Lyman Lumber, so he's in the business. I think it was only about 14 years old. And so what we determined is we did find some. Most people use circles. I use check marks so you can see where it's pointed to. We did find actual hail hits, which we'll look at some close-up pictures. But I think the reason that it's got such granular loss is the small hail hits started knocking them loose. And talking to some adjusters, they use that to justify a hail hit even if they can't see the pock marks. They can say, hey, the roof is only 14 years old. The hail has knocked all the granulars loose. We can prove that there's been hail. We know that there was a storm in the area. This proves that they have hail damage and it needs replaced. Next slide. Okay, this is a little harder to see on this screen, but you can kind of see the pock marks where the granules are fairly tight, and then you get this little kind of bullseye looking thing up there is what you're looking for. This side's a little better. And if you want to look at the computer afterwards, or I can email some pictures out. But the hit is right here, and it makes a little pock mark, kind of breaks the shingles underneath. Go ahead to the next slide. Same thing here. This is the edge of a laminate tab. This is the laminate. This is the piece underneath, and it was right at the edge, and you could see where it kind of tore that top laminate a little bit on the impact spot. Once again, because of the shadow when I was taking the picture, it's hard to see on this screen, but another impact hit. Next slide. This is just one of those fun ones. This is a very obviously easy inspection. A tree came down, it smashed the hell out of his little piece over here, ran a branch through a couple of spots. The problem with repairing this particular roof is that it already had 2 layers on it. So now if you're gonna dig down and get to the damage underneath. But you can see that the age of the roof too, it should be replaced right about now, but he was cheap and he didn't want to replace it, and I can't put a 3rd layer on, so we ended up doing some patching for him. That probably doesn't really apply to you guys. It was more interesting, and I was going through like 3 years worth of pictures, so we can go to the next slide. Here's a good example of shingles that are nailed too high. Once again, difficult to see up here in the big screen, but your nail holes are actually here, here, and here. And none of them are hitting in the shingle below it. So every shingle should have at least 8 nails in it. 4 across the standard run, and when you do them in the proper location, it'll hit the top of the shingle below it. So it should have 8. On a 412, you're very seldom going to see an issue. A 512, you're very seldom see an issue. Where you start seeing issues is the weight at an 812 or higher, that they'll start sagging out like that. I think that this pitch was about an 8 or a 1012. And whoever was installing was either very new at it, or just didn't care, hurry up, get it done, no big deal, bang, 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 and away they go.
I see that common on even just ranch houses that are 412, that you can see those shingles falling out.
You can, you definitely can at times.
But where do you find out when you're walking the road?
Well, that too.
They don't hold up the
Wind, it reduces your wind protection too, because it lifts much easier. These are some extreme cases. But you can see where even some of these shingles up here are starting to slide as a section because they're not lining up. Next slide. So same thing, this was a real steep pitch, nailed way too high in a 3-tab different house. What I don't have, and I should have grabbed some pictures off of our barn, we have a round roof barn, that if you don't nail into the double laminate tab, this tab underneath can actually slide out even if the rest of the shingle doesn't. And we shingled our barn, and we don't have many, but we've got 4 or 5 across the whole 110-foot length of that dairy barn that have slid out. We've got to go back, shove them back up in place. We'll see this picture a little later on. You can't see it, but there's a nail right here in the joint in the shingle below it. And we'll talk about that later. Another thing to note is that the bottom of the shingle should be right flush with that transition line. And this roof specifically was nailed, I suppose, 1/4 of an inch high across the whole roof. Whoever installed it held everything high, which makes it difficult to hit that little 3/4 of an inch where the 2 pieces meet.
But they saved a couple bundles of shingles.
Well, they probably did, and at $50 to $52 a bundle, when you're that worried about it, I guess that could be the difference of being in business or not.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to readjust your values, but next slide. Okay, a couple of things with vents. So improperly installed flashings or problems with flashings. So for example, this flashing, I would guess was retrofitted. Somebody added a kitchen exhaust, they threw the vent in. And instead of removing this row of shingles, this row of shingles, and this row of shingles, cutting the hole, mounting it, and then cutting the shingles in so they came over top, they just caulked the hell out of it and tucked it underneath that top shingle so it shed water. That could potentially last, if you know you're gonna replace the roof in 3 or 4 years, that's probably going to be sufficient without having problems. If it's more long-term, the caulk's gonna fail, as we all know, and
That
you're
looks
gonna
like
have issues.
That looks like a newer shingle, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a newer shingle, it was probably only 5 or 6 years old. And they were having leaks, that's why I got called and had pictures taken, because I had to go back and solve it. And, same token, we just had an individual call us, my roof was replaced in August of 2025 and it leaked through the skylight, and they came back and changed the flashing, but I don't trust it now, can you come and inspect it? Well, what am I gonna do for you? I didn't install it, there's nothing I can, you know what I mean, visually. So, it's a common problem when people do things wrong. The note here, this was actually installed correctly. From the bottom, the flashing looked good, but we got to the backside and there was a little tear that had started. So something to take note of, if you're looking at it from the ground, it might look good, but there might be tears in those older, especially the plastic pipe boots. The metal pipe boots seem to have a better rubber on them, they don't split as bad, but the plastic ones. And so we ended up just taking another cover that slides down over it and covering that so the water drained, and that's gonna solve it until they replace that flashing in whenever the roof is done. Being that it's a 3-tab roof, they probably only have about 6 or 8 years left.
Levi, do you like to see the shingles on the side of all flashing like that? At least down, half to 3/4 down farther?
Oh, like here or over here?
No, the first one, that one.
This one.
The side shingles,
Yep.
they should be down farther?
So, this one probably did need to be down farther. I don't remember, I know we were focused on this, and so I don't remember if this one, oh yeah, that should have been, they should have been on top as well, and we're gonna see another picture of that that's a little better visual. Next slide on that. Yep, I think, so this was the finished product, right? They should have had this shingle on top, but this is the boot we put on it to solve their problem.
So I typically, the way, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, but when I look at that, as long as that shingle is overlapped to the end of the opening, or the pipe.
Yeah, that's gonna be halfway down, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, at least halfway down.
Because otherwise that water, snow, melting, shingle will just like sideways.
Right. I would really like to see this one over top, because as long as this is sticking out, and we're gonna see an example of the other problem here shortly. As long as this is sticking out and shedding over top of those bottom shingles, the more you can get on top of that flashing, the better off you are. Because worst comes to worst, you could always run a little bead of caulk along that shingle for that temporary 5-8 year fix. Trying to caulk down here and stop it, now you're trying to lift shingles and get it up high, and it just turns into a mess. So, once again, that roof was old enough that flashing was failing, so that I suppose 5 or 6 years and they were gonna have to replace it anyway. This is just an old worn out pipe boot.
Looks like that's
You know, yeah, it's a different one than the previous picture, but I don't remember which roof was which. We've had so many 3-tabs in here. But it's just worn, you know, it's just absolutely shot. Temporary fix is putting that little plastic rubber cap over it. Permanent fix is pull it out, take some shingles out, pull it out, put a new one in. But if they're looking at replacing in 3 years, that rubber cap to make everything shed is probably the most economical for a customer. And that's something you guys could even do since you're there. If you have a couple in your car, throw it on, charge you an extra $50, solve your problem, and go on with your day. Let's try that next.
Jumping in for day, guys.
Well, you know, but then I don't have to, because for me, a service call is $200, and it's generally me going out and doing it because my crew's all on the roof and I don't have a maintenance guy. And then I ended up not billing them, because by the time I tried to bill them for $200 for that hour and a half it took me, or 2 hours it took out of my day, it's just not worth it. So here's the other problem. We can't tell if that flashing is actually on top of shingles at any point. Same thing here. It looks cool because you can't see any metal sticking out. But there's a good possibility that it's stuck it all the way down to the roof, just shingled around it, and any water coming in is coming right in underneath, and the only thing that's keeping you dry is your paper. Answer to this is you pull 3 or 4 shingles, you get them lifted up. Well, the answer to this actually first is to lift the tab and see if you can see that metal on top of the shingle. If you can see that metal, you'll probably be okay until it's replaced. But I say bad things about roofers that do stuff like that. He's right, so I'll wait a second.
Good.
Okay. Just some other random stuff. This pipe boot was very, very old. They decided to use, I don't know, I don't think it was Karnak, but something along those lines. Up around here where the rubber gasket's gone, but they also did it around here and across the bottom. And the biggest issue with this is if you seal that bottom, any water that comes through the side is now trapped, potentially either trapped and rotting the shingles faster, or it's backing up and running in the hole. This is another example of when we're inspecting, I don't know if this was necessarily a leak here, but we were up there to say, hey, how old is my roof? Do we need it replaced? And so we were just taking some pictures of some of the issues that we could show the customer, hey, we do need to replace it. Nails backing out a little bit and really coming through those 3 tabs is especially problematic. The simple quick fix, a little silicone caulk on top, you're good for a year or 2. Get the son of a gun replaced, move on with your life.
The key part is you're good for a year or 2.
Right.
So when you're seeing that on a brand new roof, that this was how they installed it.
Yes.
Well, now that's good.
Yes. So like for shiners are a great example of that. The nail is sticking halfway out or even all the way out. We started doing is we pull that shiner, we would slide a new piece of starter strip up underneath, 6 inches wide, so it would cover the hole. So anything that came through that would spread away from the nail hole and the shingle below it. And then it would seal itself in there, and we haven't had any callbacks. Caulking it, even on a new one. So that's the other thing. A brand new roof, gonna have lots of oils, gonna be nice and tight. That nail shouldn't start leaking for 5 or 6 years because you've got so much oils that's fresh and new. 5 or 6 years down the road, things start drying out, shingles start shrinking, that hole actually opens, and that will let water in. Then you put some caulk on it, 3 or 4 years down the road, it starts leaking again, and then you're just saying bad things about your roof. So just some things to be cognizant of. Next slide. This is an example on one roof where they had their plastic pipes coming out of a chimney and all of the caulking had failed. Fortunately, it was in a chimney, so it didn't really leak into the house per se, but the chimney was old, and I'm sure at some point it started leaching through the bricks. So this is on a gable overhang, and it just wasn't well put together right here, so they were getting some water. Now it's far enough out that it wasn't actually coming into the house at this point, but the flashing should have been extended a little bit. When it came time to re-roof it, we ended up pulling some fascia off and replacing that piece of sub-fascia and changing how it was flashed up here. But the chimney desperately needed some love too, because there was a lot of mortar missing. Let's go to the next slide. Very hard to see right here, but this is, so the roof mat and the chimney sat on one side, so you couldn't put caps across it. It was right at the peak, but the back end was right at the peak. But this flashing here, when it was installed, wasn't pushed over or tucked around, and there ended up being a hole here, and we had to go back and pull. Well, we didn't go back, because we didn't do that job, fortunately. I made sure that any problems we had, I didn't put in the slides tonight. Anyway, they were getting water in there. Was flashing, metal flashing on chimneys, on sidewalls, on head walls, on corners, should be done in such a way that you shouldn't need any caulk to prevent a leak. Now, we always use a little bit of caulk to tuck into the corner just as a precautionary extra insurance, but at the end of the day, metal flashing should overlap enough that the water will run without any caulk required. This is just a picture of Electrical mast, the old flashing was completely shot, so they cut it out, they shingled around it, they tarred the hell out of it and went away. And fortunately, it was in the eave for the customer, it was out past the house, so while it was rotting the soffit and the rafter tail off, it wasn't getting into the house and really damaging anything, so. Damage was minuscule, but they do make a 2-piece hard plastic boot with the rubber. Cut it to size, put the bottom on, put the top on over top, and it's designed to shed and look just like any other plastic boot. We started using the heck out of them, and they've solved almost all of our problems. Next slide. Okay, here, this is 2 pictures of the same thing. So what we have is we have a tear in the shingle right here, we have a shingle joint right here, and we have a tear in the shingle here. So the problem is this shingle goes up and the top of it goes to about here. The joint is here and the tear is here, so any water coming in here is actually running underneath your shingles and coming in. Here's a little bit more close up of it, the shingle joint with the tear above it. So when you're looking at tears on shingles on the roof aren't end of the world unless they're too close to a joint below it. And I've got a couple more pictures coming up in here that are going to show some 3 tabs where half the tab is missing, but it's at a joint, so that's going to cause a leak. If it had been 1 tab over, that could be missing for the next 15 years. There's no joint next to it, so not a big deal. Go ahead and the next slide. Yep, here's an example. Joint right here. It's hard to see in the picture, unfortunately. The shingle tore, and now you have water getting in above that shingle below it on the joint.
What are some of the causes that would cause it to tear? Wind or installation?
So, actually, what we've found is that sometimes the roof moves enough that if it seals too well, and that old Owens Corning from the early 2000s had a tendency to have it too thin of a mat. They switched to fiberglass. We're making a lighter, better shingle. Fiberglass is way tougher than the paper we're using. We can use a lighter mat. And they actually, I could talk bad about every brand of shingles, so don't take this as Owens Corning is a bad product. The mats were so light that when the roof shifted, they would get a tear 4 feet long where the 2 sheets of plywood butted out, and you would get them around the roof. Now I get it, we're trying a new product, we're trying new stuff, we're trying to make it better. Problem is you take those out, send it in and say, hey, it tore here, it shouldn't be doing this. They say, oh, it was nailed too high in one nail over here, we're not gonna cover because it was installed incorrectly. CertainTeed back in the early 2000s, same issue. They tried to make a better product, but instead of going with a fiberglass mat, they decided to impregnate their paper mat with more asphalt, more tar, make it a heavier, thicker shingle, put your granules on top. Man, this shingle's gonna last forever. It backfired on them. The tar got hot in the summertime, it blistered, it cooled off, the blisters broke, the granules ran away, and in about 10 years, your roof was all curled up and just absolutely like garbage. They didn't pay as much as people thought they should pay. A roof cost, an average roof at the time probably cost about $5,000 to $7,000. They were getting back prorated about $500 to $800. Bullshit. Filed up a class action lawsuit. The people that got in on the class action got actually about 20% less than the people that just took what CertainTeed was willing to pay. And CertainTeed didn't quibble. Yes, our shingle failed. According to our policy, this is what the prorate is, this is what you're getting paid, but didn't quibble, paid the check, based off of what at that time, they had what they called the sure start, so if the shingle failed within the first 5 years, labor material disposal, and then it was prorated out for the next 15 years, or next 20 years, I think it was. So people are 10, 12 years in, getting a new roof, you're only getting half of the prorate, and it only covers material based on the price it was when you bought it.
The guy from CertainTeed was here, he said they used today's price of shingles when they paid those off.
Do they? Maybe they do. Now back then, I don't know, this was 15 years ago.
He said they would prorate the shingle as they should, so.
Yeah, but they're basing it on today's prices.
But they were basing it on today's prices.
Okay, and that might have been the fact, I don't remember, I was still an installer at that point, I wasn't dealing with, I just remember the complaints. So that might be a very valid point. But we, as a company, stuck with Certainty because one, they did improve their products, and two, I didn't get well, it was installed incorrectly, that's why it failed. No, our shingle failed, we're gonna pay out based on what our warranty says we're gonna pay out. Now, every company has gone to limited lifetime, there's no more 30, no more 40. I mean, I've had customers, I got a 40-year shingle and it's starting to fail. Well, it was a marketing term back then, they thought they made a better shingle. So limited lifetime, 10 years, labor material disposal, I think GAF is 12 for that same warranty. Labor material disposal if the shingle fails. And then prorated out for the next 40 years by the month. You can buy, and every brand has this now, you can buy an extended warranty. You could transfer it once in the first 12 years, and that extended warranty takes that Sure Start, or whatever they call it for their brand, from the 10 years out to the full 50. The caveat is you can only transfer it once, and you can only transfer it in the first 12 years. Statistically speaking, talking to them, people move every 7, so they figure 14 to 21 years they're out from underneath of that warranty. They put a couple bucks a square in their pocket. They know that there's a few people that are gonna build a forever home and they're gonna pay out on it, no big deal, because we just sold 35,000 other ones covered.
Not to mention the people that forget to transfer.
Well, and insurance covers it, so yeah, exactly. Hail damage, so insurance covers it. And actually, I know specifically with Certainty, the question was asked of their rep, if there was hail damage, is the warranty still good? We had a hailstorm, insurance said I didn't have any damage, but is the warranty still good? Because, you know, it's taking a beating. Yes, the warranty is still good. We'll send it in. If it's proven to be hail damage, we'll find proof that it was hail damage, not deterioration or not failure on our part. If there was a failure on our part, we'll cover it according to our. And I think most of the companies are finding that they've got to lean that way, because if they don't, people are going to quit using them. So on that note, when I'm talking to customers, talking about warranties, the standard, so they've come out with some new products. We can talk about that a little bit. So most of the major manufacturers have come out with what they call the climate flexion. It's a modified bitumen product. It's got some rubberized polymers in it. They got a whole bunch of fancy terms and a lot of sales gimmicks to make this amazing shingle. Two things about it that I've started offering it to my customers as a better, best option. The standard landmark, the standard Owens Corning duration, the standard GAF SDZ are all very comparable shingles. They're gonna last between 22 to 27 years on the average house. That's gonna be their life expectancy. This Climate Flex shingle, Malarkey actually came out with the product 25 years ago and started marketing it. They were much more expensive, and they were a small company, so they had a small market share. But people that were legitimately looking for a better shingle would buy it. It's a good shingle. All the major manufacturers jumped on that bandwagon 3 or 4 years ago and actually got it, well, probably sooner than that, but actually got a product on the market in the last 3 or 4 years. In the last 2 years, I've had a lot of customers say, what can I do to get a little better shingle? Where's my bang for my buck? And so, since I'm very versed in Certainty, we'll talk Certainty for a little bit. You had your standard Landmark, you had your Landmark Pro. It was a few pounds heavier a bundle. It wasn't a big difference, but they offered high definition colors was kind of the selling point of the Pro. And then you had the triple laminate, which just made it a bigger definition. You put 2 laminate pieces on top of each other, on top of the standard single sheet underneath. Paying more money, you get the high def colors, you get more definition in your roof, but you're not really getting a better shingle for the money it costs more. And I had customers asking, so I went back to the rep and I was like, what is a no kidding better shingle? Because they can go to your luxury lines, and those are triple laminate, big, they look like slate, or they look, you know, they're diagonal, hexagonal, you know, they've got all these other fun shapes that on a big Victorian home it looks pretty sharp, but you're paying a premium for this. They're hard to work with, they're probably about twice as much. They're also a class 4 shingle, but they're standard material. And he says the bang for your buck is going to be this Climate Flex. He started explaining to me the process of the product and got me some sell sheets and some detailed specs, and so I can offer to my customer It averages about $54 a square more for the material. The labor doesn't change for me because it looks just like a standard landmark. It's just a better, heavier product. It's class 4. Some insurance companies will provide a small discount on your premium for this class 4 shingle. I don't know if it's enough to cover the offset of the material cost, but you should have a better shingle, and it should last on average, I believe, to be about another 5 years. So instead of that 22 to 27, we're looking at 27 to 30, 32. Some people it's worth it, some people, no, I don't care, which is great. I'm not trying to sell it, doesn't make me any money, I'm just trying to give you a better product. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit of the breakdown on what's currently going on in the shingle. Let's keep on with the next slide. Really hard to see in this picture. They didn't have any step flashing. It's stuck, the wood comes all the way, but the aluminum fascia, and they were having a leak up here, and it ended up being, we just needed to stuck 2 pieces of step flashing in to keep it from running sideways. So unfortunately, the picture didn't turn out as clear as I'd hoped it would. This is an example of, well, you can see, obviously it's blowing up, but the gaps were about that far apart. So your 2 rows, the overlap was only about 2 inches, which is a potential leak issue on a house. So if you're going along and you see that someone either had a shingle cut short at some point because they had damaged it, so they cut it off, and all of a sudden they're starting to get together, or someone just didn't know what they were doing. Next slide. This is a close-up of the same valley. So a couple things with this valley that were problematic. They were getting leaks down here, and it's caulked all the way along this face, along the fascia. But something to note is when the directions were right. This one should be underneath, this one should be on top. It's much higher, they're about the same pitch. But when they cut the shingle, they ran it too far through the valley. You should be coming from the center of the valley and probably about 2 inches to the short side to prevent water leakage. Another problem you have is when you cut shingles like this, the top of the tab is a little spear point, so as water runs down that valley, it catches it and runs it sideways. We found that the solution to that when you were cutting your valleys like this was to cut that tab at an angle. Just reach up in there and cut it, and generally we could do that as an after fix, and that solved the problem. What we do now is we actually run a shingle sideways. We would run this one under first, run this one over top, and then run this whole side. And then we would lay a shingle on edge up here, especially with the architectural, and then just butt square into it. We've solved that problem. Gives it a much straighter line, much cleaner, neater looking. But looking down here, we have a joint right here at the bottom of the valley. And when you have that much water coming off, it's very possible it's getting in the joint, pushing sideways underneath of it and leaking in that way. So it would be much recommended to have that joint out at least a foot. And depending on the house, we prefer to run our shingle all the way underneath the eave and put step flashing along the wall. That's the preferred method. In some cases like here, that's not possible because it's too narrow. So wherever we have to stop putting step flashing, we start down and start on the wall because we can't reach back in there. We start the step flashing out here. So any water running down the face is on step flashing. It gets down to this shingle, it can run sideways, but that's now step flashing in underneath, and the whole house is protected.
Levi, shouldn't it be cut, the valley should never touch the other side, that one side should be cut back.
Well, so this shingle should have been run under.
Right. Well, but
First.
you don't know how much, you don't know how far the underlaid shingle is. It could
Oh,
actually
in here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the one side should be cut back, you should always have a 3 or 4 inch.
Oh, yeah.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just wrong.
Right, no, this portion here is absolutely wrong. And that's what, like going back to the bigger picture, this one should have been run underneath first, because I guarantee you they're getting water
Yep.
right there, because that's where they should. Now, if you have ice guard, if you've ice guarded a property, you put your valley tin in properly. And so that's one other thing with valley tin. Valley tin isn't to keep water out unless you have an open valley system and you're doing W valleys. You wanna know if a Minnesota guy roofs a job around here that's new? It'll have open metal valleys.
Open metal.
open metal, that's what their code is over there, is a W valleys. And so as you drive around town, you see these new roofs, you can tell if it's a Minnesota crew because of those open W
Do
valleys.
you like metal? Do you use metal or?
Oh yeah, we use metal, but we put it underneath.
The crimp metal with the?
No.
No?
No, we just take a 20-inch wide roll and roll it out. So the whole point of valley metal is actually, originally it was to keep that valley dry. But the real purpose for it now is so when you're walking up the valley, the shingles lay smooth and you don't step into a small hole and tear a hole in your shingles, tear a hole into your ice guard. Is the big purpose of valley metal now, with the exception of these open valleys. I don't know if that's code in Minnesota or if that's something that certain towns in Minnesota like to have because it's a look. But man, all the crews seem to be doing it.
25 years ago when I started in construction, we were always told that's the longest lasting valley is the open metal.
Really?
We used to
That's what they always said 25 years ago is
We used to do more metal than.
Yeah.
that it was the longest lasting way to do a valley.
Yeah. I don't know, but
Back then it was all free tabs, so they didn't last worth a shit anymore.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of it
Yeah.
too. And 3-tab valleys that are closed can have issues because that tab is so close right there. You got every point, you've got this tab. Where with these slab shingles, as long as your joints are offset enough, you have a full piece of shingle, which I think is an improvement. And adding valley ice guard to everything. 2 rows on the bottom, 1 row up the valley. A few jobs, people have asked for 2 rows up the valley. We've done that for them. We've done 3. You run 1 up the valley, you put your W metal in, and then you put the next 2 rows on the outside of that on top of the W valley, and then you shingle. So there's a couple different ways to do it. We just took, and it wasn't W valley, it was just regular valley metal, but it was an open valley. This spring, replaced the customer's roof, put the closed valley in, and she came out and said, "This is the first time I've liked the look of my roof since I bought the house." Got rid of that ugly metal. That's the people preferences too. Let's continue on here. Okay, ventilation. Unfortunately, the other pictures, I forgot to add a couple other pictures about ventilation issues. So this is an Owens Corning. I think they call it CobraVent. It looks like corrugated cardboard, but it's plastic. No baffles. The customer is going to have moisture issues. It's not a question of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they have moisture issues. There's no baffle on it, and we found on this one, he was having leaks in his garage here at this point, and we discovered that it was a low slope roof. The CobraVent wasn't tucked up enough, so he might have had issues with any ridge vent, to be fair about it. All of these nails were rusted all the way down through. And when the water would hit the caps, it would actually run a little sideways and go in the nail holes. When we lifted it up, there was water underneath of it. But the biggest problem with this as far as ventilation goes is it doesn't give you enough open air space and it doesn't have baffles. Wind will be coming from the west, it'll go through one hole out the other and not do any drawing, it'll just shove itself through. If you have baffles, the wind coming up the roof hits the baffle, raises and causes it to draw. And I've seen those baffled ones melt an inch-wide channel in 2 feet of snow on the roof, letting the heat out. So we do know that they're drawing in their work. But yeah, this the whole installation of his ridge vent up there was just bad. I know some guys that swear by this, but I've gone back and fixed their work too because they had moisture issues in the house. So that's my take on it. If you see that, the recommendation is have it replaced at some point sooner rather than later, especially if they are having condensation issues. Next slide. This was we skipped this. This was a video that showed me lifting the pieces apart and all the water that was throughout it. And I went along, but it not playing properly.
Oops.
Look, this is one of those little fun ones where everything about this building was wrong. They had the drip edge on, they shingled the roof, they added a 1x6 on everything and then put soffit and fascia underneath the lip of the drip edge. And so as you can see on this corner, everything that came down went in and rotted their subfascia. And the roof is just, it should have been replaced about 10 years ago. I mean, this is stuff that anybody should, I mean, this is more for fun in here than anything informative, because you guys know enough about this that I'm not telling you anything new. Just what people build out there is absolutely wild. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so one other little thing to look for. So these shingles started sliding. These ones here started sliding out. You can't see it in the picture here, and you can barely see it in the picture here, but right in that little gap, right where the two meet, in the shingle below it, there's a nail. So when somebody was nailing, they didn't do a good job of keeping their spacing. And that nail, even though it's hidden underneath the joint, we never would have found it if it hadn't slid. Right there, that's gonna be a potential leak. So if you have a customer saying, hey, you're doing the inspection, I have moisture issues, those are some of the little details to look for in the attic. This is another example of one of the random things we found with a poor installation. Next slide. Here's a very poor tin roof job. It's a shed steel. They didn't counter flash in any way, shape, or form along the chimney. It comes back to the old asbestos siding, and you can't see it in this picture very well. They put their wall flashing in, and because this siding was such bad shape, they took ice guard and tucked under the siding and over the metal flashing top to finish their flashing product. And then, so this is looking up the roof, comes down. This picture's turned, but this here is this right here. So we're turned now, and they had a little cricket they put in. So yeah, so this part of the picture is right here. Little cricket they put in, and they just an absolutely horrendous sloppy job. It was a rental that somebody asked me to take a look at the roof because they were trying to sell it or they were interested in buying it or something, and I told them to run. Don't get anywhere near this project because the rest of the roofs were just as bad. Next slide. Okay, so this is a power pole coming up through that porch roof. They did zero flashing around it. They put the tin roof over. They nailed a piece of aluminum, created a piece of fake flashing, if you will, aluminum, nailed it in along the wall, and then just siliconed the hell out of that, hoping that it wouldn't ever leak. This is actually installed properly. That was the only thing on that entire roof that was installed properly. So these rubber, on metal roofs, these rubber boots have a little metal strip around it, and it's designed, I didn't bring it with me, I had, you should use what's called water cutoff. It's a liquid butyl, and it's sticky as all shit. You get to a little dab on your finger and you can string it out and it won't break. It's absolutely, it gets like, you get it on you and it's on everything. It never dries out if it's covered up. But you put a bead of that and then you put screws every about inch and a half all the way around, and it can go up over ribs and seal. So that's what it's designed for. So that was actually the one thing that on this roof that was installed properly. Everything else terrified me. Next slide. Okay, we have rubber cover tape on TPO. They're two different products, they don't match. They both have a self-adhesive tape on the vinyl, but it's a different adhesive, and they don't marry up. I have no idea why the customer had this done. They probably wanted a white roof, and whoever was doing it was like, well, I've got a whole bunch of leftover cover tape, we're gonna do it. I don't know if I have, yeah, this slide right here. This is the bottom edge of the house. So this is the eaves, and then this would be your rake edge, if you will, into the parapet wall. And all the way along here, that was peeling up and was starting to rot out their subfascia.
That looks like something a homeowner tried to patch, like something was leaking and they went up there with some rubber.
Well, I would say that, but it literally was every single joint on the perimeter. So it was somebody that thought they were a professional did it. I don't think it was, well, and knowing the lady that lived in the house, there was no way she or her husband were doing that. So they probably hired a friend of a friend, would be my guess. I don't know. Anyway, like the TPO job or the vinyl job looked good. That was well done. And in fact, this as it was installed, if it had been the proper product, actually looked good. It was the fact that it was the improper product, so they didn't adhere properly was the problem. The actual installation of it actually did look good, so somebody at least made some effort and they did a nice job, just incorrectly. Next slide. So this was for a slumlord that we done some work for about 15 years ago, and he called us up from Arizona and was like, I'm trying to sell a building down in Fall Creek and it's leaking and I need a patch. And there really wasn't much patching to this roof. So what we did is we cut the rolled roofing back, cleaned up along that wall, and then we took, well, the product name is Flintastic by Certainty. There's a couple manufacturers that make it. A lot of people call it mod bit or modified bitumen because it's similar to what the Climate Flex shingles are made of. But what it is a two-piece system. You have a base sheet that has I don't even know if it's a plastic film, but a film on top of it. You nail that down with cap nails across your whole low sloping roof. And then on top, you cover the whole roof with it, and then you put your drip edge on the sides and the bottom, and then you have a self-adhering sheet that goes on top of it that's called the cap coat or the top coat. And that has granules like shingles does, so you can match a lot of your shingle colors. You can have, have 4 or 5 grays and 3 or 4 browns. But that adheres on, it self-adheres on, and you prime your metal, and that sticks to it, and it should last as a low-cost solution instead of rubber. This modified bit or this Flintastic is a pretty good option. For example, a standard roof right now, 412 pitch, just straight, nice runs, about $550 a square labor material. This modified bitumen stuff, or the Flintastic, is about $750 a square, where rubber is about $1,250 to $1,500 a square, depending on the job. So it's a nice alternative for that little lean-to out the back. It should last about 20 years. Rolled roofing used to last about, 10 or 12, it seemed like. Now, this product is lasting a fair bit longer, where it's probably worth the price over shingles. Well, anyway, I despise slumlords, I'm just gonna put it that way. Next slide. Some rubber issues. The rubber starts peeling here. Once it starts lifting, it's just a matter of time, so if you're inspecting rubber. Didn't I go up and look at a rubber roof?
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah. This is one in Chippewa, but there's a joint here, so they put a piece of uncured cover tape over it, and it started releasing right on the curve up the parapet wall, and so water, basically as it sits there, it just dissolves the glues that hold everything together. So if it's a little bit loose or a little bit flipping, starting to lift up, you probably got some time, but you're gonna need to do something to it. And we'll look at something that we did here in the next slide. So this is a close-up picture of this corner. That's the before picture. So this corner right here, the rubber comes in. I'm sure it was cut to go around it. They put you can't really see it real well, but this should be a 3-patch system. You put one piece and then you put additional pieces. So they had done it correctly, but for some reason it had not adhered properly, or over time it had started shrinking and it hadn't been glued properly, so it started separating and it started leaking. So what we ended up doing is we ended up cutting as much of this as we could get loose. We cut it out, and then instead of using 6-inch, we used 12-inch. Took a rubber membrane, old rubber membrane cleaner is called. It's rubber membrane. I don't know what kind of chemical it is. Gasoline doesn't work as well, but gasoline will kind of do the same thing. It's some kind of acetone. Scrub and scrub and scrub and get all of the black, all of the gunk, all of the dirt, everything you can out. It's almost feels like new. You prime it, and then you go ahead and you overlap. You can see underneath here where the old, it's kind of hard to see from where you're sitting probably, but you can see where the old joint is in underneath of the whole thing. So that should last them the rest of the life of the rubber roof. I suppose a rubber roof is going to last 25 to 35 years, depending on a fair number of what kind of a building it's on, and a few other things. But that's just one example of some of the rubber roof stuff we found. Next slide. There you go, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, bitches, moans.
So, I think a couple of us have seen it, where they have retrofit flashing, where it bolts through, and then there's like a brace or something on the bottom.
Plate on the inside of the
Yeah.
attic.
Yeah,
And-
oh, yes,
Something or other they call them.
Yeah.
we're,
Like your plumbing vent pipes.
yeah,
Yeah, it attaches to the face of the shingle, and then it's got like a rubber gasket.
Yeah.
And the bolts go through, and there's a plate on the inside of the attic that bolts the bottom side.
I've only seen that once,
I've
and
seen
I
a couple of them.
motherfucker, pardon my language, but I motherfuckered the guy that invented that shit.
And first time I seen it, I looked it up online, and sure as shit, that's how it's supposed to be installed, is right on the face of the shingle.
Yep.
But
So they must use kind of like a metal roof, that sealant underneath it, possibly?
No,
I
the
think it's
rubber
just a rubber
gasket's probably
gasket.
enough with the bolts and the metal plate that pinches it.
Yeah.
And that rubber gasket probably has grooves in it, so that way it mashes down and really seals. Yes, where was I? Was I working with one of you guys when we ran into this? No, I don't think so. We ran into somewhere and we said a lot of bad things about the previous company that installed everything.
Yeah.
there'll be some pictures on our email.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of this, what do they call it, roof max or something, a rejuvenation that is?
So I had a customer that got,
When did you do
I
it?
gave him a price and he was looking at doing that. And I said, if you do that, let me know, I wanna see what it does. I don't have a positive or negative opinion on it, I don't know enough about it. I wanna say it's a scam, but I don't think it is, you're getting another 5 years of life. I ran into an old guy about 15 years ago that would put latex paint on his shingles every 5 years. And he hadn't replaced his roof in over 40 years. Painted the son of a gun every year, but he got the cheapest latex paint he could get, and he got up there with a roller and he rolled the son of a bitch. And he probably spent $400 in paint and how much of his own time, but he didn't care, it was a low slope. Just painted it, and so the shingles lasted. Was it because he was rejuvenating them with the oils and the paint? I don't know. So,
Would, once the granulars start coming loose, though, it can't do anything, right?
well,
'Cause it breaks
but
those down in-
this rejuvenate might adhere to the asphalt underneath.
Okay.
I don't know enough about it. I've seen it advertised, and I saw a couple of things, where the company was trying to find people to install it, so I was getting their pitch and their spiel, but it wasn't something I was interested in trying to do, so we didn't really follow up.
Something well more than 20 years ago, back early in construction,
Yeah,
never took off, but somebody tried a spray-on vinyl coating to spray over your shingles.
Yeah.
Basically, your shingles become like a vinyl siding.
oh, really?
Never did take off, clearly.
No.
But-
Well, we were talking one day with one of the builders, and we were like, well, spray and bed lining, that shit's tough as hell. Why don't we put some kind of, whether you do like the modified bit with the two-ply system, you put some kind of a ply sheet down, and then spray that on, how long would that last? Well, with the movement, I don't know, that's part of the problem. So real quick, let's, since we just had the storm, we just talked about warranties a little bit, let's talk about inspecting roofs for customers that want to know if they have hail damage and how to meet their expectations without getting involved with a fight with the insurance company, because that's not our job. I tell customers, they say, do you work with the insurance company? I say, no, you pay the premiums. And I don't know if I was having a conversation here tonight or a customer. Insurance is you betting that your house is going to be damaged, and the insurance company is betting it isn't. And how likely you believe your house is going to be damaged is how much you're willing to bet. You want the cheapest premiums you can, you're going to get the cheapest product possible, and they're gonna be cheap about it. You pay high premiums, and they're gonna come in and do 100% full coverage for you. So,
Okay.
it all depends on the adjuster, it all depends on the insurance policy. And so I got a lot of calls from people. The first week was, we just need someone to look at it, to see if we have damage. Well, I'm sure you have damage, I don't know why you're calling, you could call your adjuster. About a month into it, it got to be, hey, we had some out-of-towners come by, we've been putting them up, we finally let them look at the roof. They said they came back with a bunch of pictures, they said they found damage. Can you come and look, cause I don't trust them. I can come and look. Well, at one point I couldn't because I was that busy, but yes, I could come and look. So what I would tell them is, look, and I said this tonight, I don't need to work today, I don't need to get creative about it. These out-of-towners are trying to sell 200 jobs for this summer. They're gonna get as creative as they can to sell this job. They don't care about that. I looked at some roofs and I said, because of the age of your roof, they're probably gonna pay you $500 and you're gonna be forced to replace it. So you're probably gonna get another 3 years out of your roof, and maybe we're just hanging on to it and do it in 3 or 4 years when everything slows down. Some people are like, absolutely. Other guys were like, well, I really want to find hail damage. I'm hoping they'll cover it. I said, well, I found a couple possibles. I don't have the 8 hits in the 10 foot by 10 foot area that they're expecting. The adjuster might have a difference of opinion. That's okay. So I when I go to inspect, I let them know right up front that I am leaning against finding any damage. If there's damage, I will absolutely mark it, but it's got to be pretty positive hail damage. And when we come down, we're going to discuss whether you should bother putting a claim in or not. And I would say about 2/3 of the time it was worth putting a claim in just to see if they were going to cover it. The other third of the time, you don't. I found a hit there and I found a hit there, but I did not find enough for them to cover. You can put a claim in, but I think you're not going to get it. So probably don't mess with your insurance that way. But that's how I address it with customers. Look, I'm not the final say in this. Your adjuster is. These guys are professionals. This is what they do for a living. And if it's there, they're gonna find it, and if it's not, well, you're just out of luck. Or maybe you're not out of luck, maybe you're safe and you don't have to replace your roof for 15 years. So if you approach it that way, I think you're gonna solve yourself some problems. You don't get involved with insurance companies. You're just taking a look to confirm whether the out-of-towners were accurate in their assessment. You're not the end-all be-all, you're not the adjuster, and if you approach the customers that way, I think you can get paid to go do these inspections without causing yourself a lot of headaches. And there's only been 2 customers that wanted pictures from me. They literally wanted me to go up on the roof, come down and tell them that the yes, call your adjuster, or no, don't bother. That was literally it. So most of the time it's pretty simple. But obviously you want to protect yourself because like you were saying, and I didn't catch your name. John. Like John was saying earlier, he's not a one item inspector. He's kind of and I'm sure you're all the same way. You don't show up just to check somebody's roof or check the furnace and the plumbing in the basement. You know, when you're inspecting, you're doing, I'm assuming, pretty much a whole house every time, in general. But maybe this is a niche thing where 15 or 20 minutes up there and, you know, you get your fee and you're on your way and it was nice and simple, you don't even have to write a report, might be worth it. And boy, it saved me a whole lot of running that I don't have time to do. So, and then you can get, you know, there's some great local companies, Chippewa Valley Exteriors, ourselves, Peck Roofing out of he's south of by Levi. He's a one-man show, so he's busy as all get out. But some of these guys will come out and follow up inspections if you've got questions on it, or they have people on their staff that can do that. So if you get into a pinch where somebody's asked you to, and I'm not sure, you know, you can get somebody. But a lot of these guys are just salesmen that are going out and doing the inspections, so it's not like they're professional installers. I have the advantage on about half of the salesmen in this town because I actually installed for a number of years, and I can tell you what I'm looking at. I didn't get it out of the book. So that's the only other advantage for me versus some of these places that are using salesmen to do the inspections.
So Levi, this roof, Jim looked at it too, so we're gonna, not that old a roof.
Yeah.
A little dinky house.
Yep.
Yep, real dinky. So you go up there and look from the road, yeah, you start walking around, it looks nice, right?
Yep.
Okay, now go down a little bit, Matt.
To the next page.
Go down to the next page, keep going. That's look, okay, keep going, keep going. Look at these stress cracks in this thing.
Yeah.
And there was like, what, 8 of those? I mean, they were all over the place, on all 4
There
sides.
was so many more than that.
Yeah, there was, yeah, I mean, a lot of them.
The roof is junk.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I called it out, they have it looked at, contractor, you know, when they'll do, and Jim goes and does inspection, here they put it like latex caulk.
They just went up there and caulked it up. Go
White.
back to the email meta.
So they went, so to fix it, they went and caulked it.
Yeah, they caulked it.
They go back to the email.
Really?
Yeah.
So, where's it? No,
I think that's the
Back
most.
up.
No,
Where it
cause
says roof
from the
caulk.
first pictures, that looks a nice looking roof, and it looks fairly new.
Yeah.
It's probably, what, 8
I
to
would
10
say
years old?
Not even 10 years old.
that's, I just took screenshots
Yeah,
out of
look
there.
at it.
They just caulked all the cracks.
That's the professional qualified contractor.
So they smeared caulk on there, and it was the springtime of year when the cottonwoods are all seeding out, so all that white seed
Yeah.
stuck to the caulk. That's why it's,
Why would you
that was their fix.
Fixed.
That was a fix.
We
I'm pretty
fixed.
sure they were house flippers.
He's also.
Yeah.
Yep.
the people that own
Oh,
this
yeah,
place
he's
are
a
house
house flipper.
flippers?
Yeah.
You wanted-
But they go to sell that, there's no way they're gonna sell it with a roof
Well, I
like
was
this.
inspecting it for the buyer,
Yeah.
and
Oh.
I re-inspected it,
And-
called it out, and then Jim comes and does the
In-
buyer hasn't goes through.
in their offer to purchase, they got your report.
Yep.
So in their offer to purchase, they asked the contractor to fix the roof.
Yep.
This is what he thinks it was gonna fix. So I wrote in my report that this is a substandard fix, and I recommend they replace the roof.
Yeah.
Jim, do you think that was good? That's, that roof, that's a little dinky, huh? That's some stuff. You know, remember the center wall and stuff? There's some
That
stuff.
house-
So you think that thing was? think it was
It's
set?
possible that it was moving, it depends on the brand of
Possibly.
shingles they use too. Were they using Owens Corning
That,
Oak Ridge?
that roof, or that house has some issues.
It did.
I'm
Or
pretty sure
Atlas.
I'm pretty sure that girl's still buying the house, but the whole center
She
of
is
that
buying.
house, the whole center was all sagged down like this.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a dinky house, I mean.
What do you
The
think?
seller was convinced that it was a, concrete slab that was just settling,
Oh, no.
actually wood floor in
No.
there.
We
And there's
couldn't-
no access to a crawl space.
No. And this whole center wall dropped.
And the whole thing is settled down like this.
It's a
I
little
said-
house.
I told him, I said, somebody needs to rip up some floor and get under there and see,
I
what
bet
is it? Like,
it's
is
log
the joist
joists.
just riding into dirt? Like, why is this whole
Yeah.
thing?
I bet money that it
So
was
bad.
log joists that are settling.
Could be.
But,
Well,
yeah,
couldn't get-
regardless.
I don't know for a fact, but I would guess that.
And we couldn't get in the attic either. They had the
Yeah.
attic kinda covered,
Yeah.
so we couldn't see in the attic to see what the rafters looked like and stuff, so. it's
Yeah, it was
kinda
junk.
So
It was-
as you're talking, as you're doing inspections for the buyer or the seller, probably for the buyer more often than not, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah,
50-50.
yeah, 50-50,
Yeah, okay. Recommendation for both parties. Instead of saying the roof needs to be replaced now, put it in there that the roof should be replaced in a year.
That's, well,
You know, sometimes more, sometimes less, but if it's that point where, do I replace, as the seller, I don't wanna replace the roof because I'm paying 100% of the cost for that roof. And I'm not gonna get more out of my house because I replaced the roof. I paid $15,000 for the roof, that's what it cost me. It has a new roof, I'm selling it for $150,000, so I'm out $15,000, I really only making $135 at the end of the day. For the buyer, they don't get the warranty, they don't get to pick the material, and they don't get to pick the color. So it's probably worth a little something to the buyer to be able to get the warranty, pick the material, and pick the color. So what I've started telling both buyers and sellers when I'm doing specifically roof inspections is, hey, put a thing in there. If you're the seller, tell them that we'll get 2 estimates, we'll get 3 estimates, we'll pick the metal one. I'll knock 80% of that bid off the asking price. You're gonna pay for the roof, but you're gonna drop that asking price by this much. I'm not paying the full out of pocket, I'm putting 20% of that roof in my pocket instead of just paying for it, but the buyer gets to, once again, pick the color, pick the material, and get the warranty up front.
All that negotiation stuff is for the realtors.
Yeah.
We just report conditions.
You can
Oh,
tell that-
okay,
you
so
can tell
that's
to the
really a
seller.
realtor conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can tell that to a seller, right, if you're doing a pre-listing
Yeah.
inspection, you can say that, but
Yeah.
whether, you know, you couldn't tell them you have to, right, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't say that to a buyer.
yes,
Well, I suppose not.
we look at it as a defect.
What's that?
We have to look at it, is it a defect or not? So
Okay, okay, and fair enough.
If we feel, in our opinion, that is it a defect, it's gonna leak soon.
Right.
It's in really, really bad shape, if we determine that. then
Yeah.
we write it as a defect. If
Okay.
we think it's a year or two, we call that deferred cost, where we say, okay, the roof's in, not leaking, everything's okay, but it's reaching the end of its life.
Right,
So we put
right.
in what we call a deferred cost.
So
Like
do
a
you
new horizon roof, for example.
estimate the age of the roof or the approximate life left? Do you do that as well or no?
we aim to do the best we can.
Okay, yeah, well, you can't, I mean,
It is best.
you can't, I mean, I've been doing this for 27 years specifically with shingles, and I was on a roof that was 14 years old that looked like it was 3 years old. It looked in really good shape. I tell you, 10 or 15 years, well, I could be a liar because maybe 5 years down the road. So I try not to stretch it out too far unless I know it's new.
You know, it's like new horizon, right?
Yeah,
We still see quite a few of them, actually.
it's amazing how many are still out
And,
there.
you know, are they defective?
Right.
Are they, and you look at it, the granules are coming off the built-up stack, sometimes when they're cracked, and you
Yeah.
can see them cracked, and that's different, right?
Yeah, right.
But the new horizon, there's still some around, and, you know, the granules come off the built-up section and stuff. North side's always perfect, right?
Yeah.
So, we have to make a determination, is that a defective shingle?
Right.
Or is it we mostly, I think, if it's okay,
Right.
we say defer to cost.
Right.
Is that?
And how I would generally say that is that the granular loss is significant enough to change the color of roof and increase the deterioration. It is not currently leaking and probably will not develop leaks in the next 3 to 4 years, but it should be changed sooner rather than later. And that's generally the wording I would
That's kind of,
use.
I think we all kind of.
And now that we're using these fiberglass mats, how do you tell if the roof is really shot? Yeah, there's granular loss.
Yeah.
So what I've come to the determination personally for me when I'm recommending to a customer how much life they have left, can I see those fiberglass fibers sticking out of the edges? And once I start seeing the fiberglass fibers, we are in a position where we need to think about changing it in the next 2 to 3 years. If I'm just seeing some granular loss and some serious fading, but there's no fibers yet, I would estimate it 3 to 5 years. With a re-inspection in 3 years to get an updated evaluation of whether we need to give you a bid now or not. And most couples are just happy to know that they got a couple more years and they're gonna call me back in 3 and we'll probably do the job. Now, I know that doesn't benefit you guys because you're not getting the job when you recommend, you know what I mean?
Nor do I want it.
No, right? You sure nobody wants to buy a roofing company? I got one for sale, cheap.
So these photos that I got were
Yeah.
from a customer actually, or not a customer, somebody today. The roof was just replaced 2 days ago. And it's kinda hard to see here, but there's a piece of metal
Yep,
that's sticking up, that's lifting that shingle up.
yep.
And
Not to the edge?
No, it's not to the edge.
Something
No,
like
it's
that.
No,
extra
it
piece
looks
of
like it's
metal.
a piece of step flashing that was folded
Yeah,
flat.
Yeah.
Stuffed it up in there. Why?
I don't know.
I thought there was a hole in the sheeting, you tried to nail it down over the sheeting.
But that's too close to the edge because that's over the drip edge, so I can't.
That's that last row of shingles. Go to the next one, I can't remember if there is, oh, that wasn't. They were asking about this, I told them, you know, since it was just put down, that should seal down.
That should. They were referring to this spot right here?
What's that?
Were they referring to this spot or this
No,
spot?
that right there.
This one right here? That one?
Yep.
Yeah.
But the new roof.
To be
That
fair,
was
that
two
might
days
not.
Yeah,
that'll second us.
That should settle.
Yeah,
But
sure.
it gets worse.
Okay.
So, the next photo. That was the overhang, he said that was like 1.5 inches, 2 inches of shingles. And from my understanding, that's a lot of overhang of shingle compared to,
Well, it's definitely not 1.5 inches, 2 inches.
No, so your overhang should be anywhere from 1/2 inch to 5/8, or 3/8 to 5/8 probably, to be honest about it. You want a little bit overhang because shingles shrink. But yeah, you don't wanna get more than 1 inch or it's gonna start curling down and you're gonna have.
That might be 3/4 of an inch by the look of it.
From here, from just that picture, obviously I'm not standing underneath it, but that does look acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they should be.
well, I told him, you know, call him back out, ask the questions to the contractor.
Yeah.
Asking for final payment and all that.
Yeah.
Everything.
I'm not real happy with the drip edge cut job here.
Right.
That's not very clean and that just, I'd end up chewing one of my guys that asked for that if I found it and saw it.
Yeah. At least they bent.
But they were probably leaning over the top, tucking it in,
Yep.
not standing on a ladder.
Go to the next photo, the biggest issue that they had was this right here, so if you zoom in, there'll be a closer up photo in the next one, but first of all, I told them this is a horrible roof design.
Yeah, that's terrible.
But in the next photo, you'll see that it looks like there's ice and water shield there, and then he said that gray part is like a piece of plastic, from what he can see, and then you have that, what looks like a metal piece of flashing on the top, so it looks like
Looks like reverse face.
they had tried to do something to prevent issues in that corner,
Yep,
but it just looks janky as all hell.
yeah.
And that should
Where
have like,
is this house?
Is this vinyl
They
siding
didn't
here?
say, they just said it was the south side of O'Clair.
Is this vinyl?
Yeah,
Okay,
water gonna go in the top of that, down to the.
down to the J
Yeah.
channel.
well,
That should have a diverter, that should have a little pipe diverter.
Well, ideally, shouldn't that be back behind the side?
it should be.
Yeah.
Cause you would still have
Right.
maybe, and like I said, maybe they're putting that as an additional thing where they already have the step flashing behind and they put that on top, but then you're just gonna get water collecting in between the vinyl
There
and.
should be a diverter.
Well, but the vinyl, well, you might, yeah, you could get a little bit, but depending on how it's fast, and if the flashing is behind it, and this is just a cover piece to make it look pretty, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily gonna hurt anything. But you don't know if there's anything behind it is the
Right.
problem.
I think his biggest thing though was that, like.
The ice guard showing there's no shingles up in here,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it, to me, it just kinda looks janky.
it does,
And it wasn't a very
professional
good
job.
workmanship man.
Right.
Yeah. But, I mean, if I was getting the roof redone, I would've probably put some kind of cricket or something there to shed that out.
Yep.
If you're designing a house.
But that becomes a conversation you need to have with your roofer, and can he do
Right.
siding, because now he's gonna have to remove siding, build it, or hire someone to do that.
Right.
And that's, you know, at the end of the day, that's the right way to do it.
But yeah, they wanted me to come out, look at this, and he wanted to go back to the builder, or the roofer, and have him come out and fix the issues, and I'm like, I'll look at the photos for you, to me, this looks like some janky work.
Yep.
Not the best work, but that's about all I can say.
Right.
And have him come out and kind of explain his thought process of what he was doing here.
Because maybe he has a very logical explanation that he can explain the step-by-step process of how it turned out looking like this,
Right.
why it looks like this, and what steps I took to make it there. And like I tell my guys, look, you can screw it up really bad, but if you have a logical process from start to finish, probably not gonna be mad at you. We might work on your thought processes, but at least I understand what
And
you were
your
thinking.
execution on,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
But yeah, that's kind of where I was going with him, is let him try to explain to you, because it does look like he was trying to prevent issues in that corner.
Right. It wasn't like he
How went
ignored
about
it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes you gotta give the
That
benefit.
just comes straight down into that, and there's nothing there.
Yeah. Yeah, whoever designed that house needs to be beaten. The architect.
You can't tell here, this was on
Let me look on the little computer.
fascia,
Yep. Oh.
but they had shot a nail through the fascia.
Yep, for the drip edge
And they're like, oh, well, we fixed it, we pulled the nail out. And I'm like, but if I'm getting a new roof and drip edge and fascia, I would want that fascia replaced.
Yeah.
That was my old face.
Well, that's actually just the drip edge right there, right? That's the drip edge.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's another photo of that after.
Yeah.
It's kinda hard to see, but.
Yeah, no, you can see it here.
like,
As an installer, you know what I mean? It should be replaced probably. It's something I probably wouldn't jump up and down about. It's not
Well,
gonna,
I told him it
It's a-
depends on what you want it to look like.
yes.
Me personally, if I'm getting a new roof.
You want it
drip edge
replaced.
with fascia. If I
Yeah.
get something out of the box that's scratched up, supposed to be brand new.
I'm not gonna
replace
put it on, right.
Right. I mean, something like that should be easy enough.
It really is. I mean, they're gonna have to go back and pull all the nails along that edge and put a new piece in, and they're gonna motherfucker the guy who did it. and-
But I told him that, like, if aesthetics isn't really your most important thing.
Yeah.
Throw some caulk in there and,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and actually, you don't even do that. If you take a hammer and you tap it flat, it'll almost disappear. Because you get rid of those sharp edges and put them flat, and it'll. Some people are really picky about some of those things. Some people are like, as long as a nail isn't sticking out, I don't care.
Matt, I had sent some other pictures in the email too, Gary.
Okay.
Well, and if
Just
that's,
says
you know,
rough
a
picture.
$700,000-$800,000 house.
Yeah, Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
today I sent them that.
If I'm working on a trailer house, maybe not such a big deal. If I'm working on a $1.4 million one.
So I did a bunch
So
of
this
siding
was-
work up in the Twin Cities, and the roofers would get the roof on, but the roofers didn't put the drip edge on. And I was
Yes.
the siding guy.
Mhm.
They'd hang the shingles over
Mhm.
6 inches, and then you'd have to climb up there and shove and get this drip edge under there,
Yep.
and then face nail it with colored trim nails.
What? You couldn't nail the top of the,
No, because the
Mhm.
shingles are hanging over.
that's ridiculous.
That used to be a thing. My uncle was a builder over there, and that was the thing. Yep.
The dumbest thing in the world. And
Yep.
not only that, how do you get it for sure, how do you get it under tar paper, how do you get it without? Yeah.
Lunch and
It's
everything.
a mess, but you know, here's how much they cared. When we used our pump jacks on the walls, and we nailed them through the roof. Well, no, that's not what we were doing. Normally you lift the shingle, right, put it down there. No, just nail right through the roof and tar it at the end. Who cut?
This was a brand new roof. I just looked at it about a week ago. So this is right tied into a valley, but yeah, along the starting course, you can see it's short of the drip edge.
Yep.
And then they lapped it wrong in the corner, but then they just caulked it all up there so that right at the end where that drip edge ends, you're just relying on a big wad of caulk there to keep water from getting in and getting underneath that soffit fascia where that roof line ties into the other one.
That's called job security when the out-of-towners leave.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have work in 3 years. You know what I hate to say it, but this is what's going to happen.
There's a couple more pictures of this roof.
Well, I think people are starting to get kind of
But-
wise to the fact that they don't think.
Whole bunch of
somebody's
face
gonna go
nails
up
or
on their
caulk.
roof after they're done.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Was that an out-of-town company, do you know?
I don't know who did it. But it was, literally, this is brand new. They just,
Yeah.
but yeah, all these face nails.
Well, and the fact that your valley cuts here.
Yep.
And your valley cuts here, but this shingle doesn't go all the way through, and why do you even have a shingle there? You
Yeah.
shouldn't even have a shingle there.
Nope.
Yes, there's nothing underneath it.
But the shitty thing, so there's a couple more pictures, but yeah, so like,
Yeah.
you'd have to zoom in, but yeah, you can see they started against the drip edge, they started up a half inch
Mm-hmm.
everywhere,
Up ahead.
up a half inch. But then the strangest shit thing.
Wow.
So this looks like this stuff all says amateur hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
The flashing around the chimney, some of the best work I've ever seen. The overhead power mast, they actually used a split boot like they're supposed to, where so many contractors, they just tar up the old one. So like they did that stuff really good. But then yeah, up the rakes, all this shingles are cut back
How
from
do
the
you
drip
cut
edge.
it like that? You cut it face cut.
One by one.
Yeah.
One by
You
one,
just
yeah.
lift it
face
up and
cut,
cut it
yeah.
one by one.
One by one with a
Not
hook
underneath,
blade,
though. We just
but it's
cut
all
underneath, that's
short
all.
of the drip edge.
Jeez.
So it's so weird that this
The
stuff
water
was
just
all
gonna
hacked,
run.
hacked, but the flashing around the chimney, I'm telling you, it was the best I've ever seen. Like it was just
It was
wonderful.
the one
work.
guy on the
Yeah.
crew that actually knew what
Yeah,
he was
the
doing.
He was
mason.
probably-
Well,
probably
the
retired
mason guy
furnace
did the
tech.
roof, yeah.
He was probably a retired furnace tech and he knew how to bend metal. But,
Do you have a photo of the flashing around the ship?
no, and I didn't send one. But, no, I mean, it was, yeah, his flashings were great, but all that stuff was just, so I told him, further evaluation by a contractor, repair or replace.
At the end of the day, the insurance paid for the first time, now the customer's gonna have to pay for the fix.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
The sad part is that I would say probably 60% of the storm chasers out there, or 70, it's their business model. They're actually selling a better shingle than some of these small guys that are local. You know, you got these 1 and 2 man crews that are doing work like we just saw. You know, there's a few crews in town that are doing that kind of work too, because they're a very small company and they spend half the day at the bar and the other half the day on the roof, so that's the kind of work you get, right? And they're gonna use the cheapest shingle they can buy from Menards, and they're gonna give you a roof, and we're gonna do a great job, and that's what you get. But I would say the 60% range of these storm chasers are gonna sell you a name brand shingle. That's a quality product. They're not gonna go with the cheapest version of it. They're gonna hire crews that do this for a living every day, and that's how they stay in business, is by doing a good job, because if they don't, they won't get hired again. And overall, I would say the majority of customers are going to have a pretty decent experience, but you're gonna get a handful of guys like this that we're paying really cheap,
Mhm.
or